Hello, my name's Chris, and I'm an Anywhere Club host. The Anywhere Club is a global community for IT professionals to help education, work, and community initiatives supporting each other at a global level. Today, we're going to be talking as part of our interview series. We've got two fantastic individuals who'll be joining us for a real-life world scenario into a real dev position. We're going to be hearing a little bit about that later. It's a perfect opportunity for you to hear the real-life questions asked in an interview and help you prepare for your own interview in the near future. We're going to be hearing some development-based questions, some hard skills, soft skills, and at the end, an exciting opportunity to hear feedback both from the interviewer and the candidate. So first, let's find out a little bit more about the role. The role we're looking at today is a development role with 5 years plus experience in the Java and Azure skills. It's for a global platform engineering company and actually for a project specific to a client working with data in the financial services industry. So we're going to be looking out for key questions around data and how to use some of those technologies. The client has a tech stack using Java 11 and Docker and is also involved in test automation. So it's really exciting to see what the candidate brings as part of this interview today. So let's hear a little bit more about our candidate. Our candidate has 3 years plus experience in Java, and I can see on the CV Java 11 and Azure, which is a fantastic start. They're an informatics graduate, and in their latest project, they were involved with a life sciences client where they were working on migrations, multi-tenancy implementations, and pre-release. So I'm sure we're going to be in for some great questions and feedback from the individual. So without further ado, let's find out more from our individuals. And first, we'll jump over to Bartosz, our interviewer, to tell us a little bit more about himself. Over to you, Bartosz.
Hi, my name is Bartosz Moszczynski. I'm located in Zurich. Presently, I work as a lead software engineer for the banking industry. I have almost 10 years of experience. My technical stack is revolving around the Java and cloud, mainly AWS and Azure. As for the interviewing itself, I've conducted almost 100 technical interviews. Also, I'm a huge fan of Scrum methodology.
Amazing. Great. Well, it sounds like you're very well placed for this, so it's great to have you on board. And now we're going to hear from our candidate, Rodion. Over to you.
Hey guys, my name is Rodion Lezhnyuk. I am from Minsk. I am a software engineer at a big company, currently working in healthcare domain. And also I'm a part of MGC community. And that's it. So mostly I focus on Java solutions, play the role of key developer, plays the role not only in functional teams but also in non-functional requirement teams. That's it, I think.
Amazing. So for those of you listening, we've heard a little bit about the role, we've heard about the project that the individual's interviewing for, and we've met our two fantastic individuals, our interviewer Bartosz and our candidate Rodion. So we have everything we need. So without further ado, let's kick off the interview. Over to you both, and I hope you enjoy watching.
Hello, Rodion. So let's start our round of interview. Let's split the interview into 3 parts. First, I would like to talk about your CV. I would like to hear something about your experience. I would like to you to tell me about your technical and soft skills. Then we are going to proceed to questions. There will be something from the hard skills. There will be something from the soft skills. Right after questions, we will have some time for the coding task. That would be super short one, just 15 minutes. That should be enough. You can use your favorite tool for coding. That's completely fine. And at the very end, there will be time for your questions if you would have any. Is it clear so far?
Yeah, that's clear.
Okay, so I've read through your CV. It's pretty impressive. I like your experience. Nonetheless, I would like to hear some facts from your CV, maybe about last role. What was your main focus? What was the team composition, etc., etc.
Okay, so according to my last position, I played the role of key developer at NFR team. We had quite a big healthcare project with more than 500 people, and we were responsible for multi-tenancy implementation, repository migration from mono-repository for microservices to multi-repositories for each microservice. As a content, also I played the role of a key developer in one of the functional teams in this project. We worked with some third-party content platform for medicine articles, and I integrated with this API, synchronized this data between the third-party API and our storage, performed image synchronization for Azure blob storage, such things, I think.
Okay.
Also, we used TDD on daily basis, and we used pair programming. Yeah, that's it.
Okay. What about team composition? How many people were in the
Team composition, we had Scrum Master. We had Scrum, 2 weeks sprint. We had the team leader, backend team leader, and I think 4 developers, and a few QAs, and automation QA and DevOps.
Okay, sounds pretty complete and pretty exciting. Okay, that's great. Thanks for that introduction. Okay, so I think we can proceed to questions. Yes, I have a bunch of those. Some of these will be super open ones, let's say. But yes, let's start from the core. Let's start from Java, and yes, hopefully from the warm-up questions. So at first, I would like to ask you about OOP. I would like you to name and describe OOP principles when you code in Java or in any other language that is object-oriented. What principles we should follow?
Okay, so OOP is object-oriented programming methodology for programming languages. It includes 4 principles. First one is abstraction. I'll describe them a little bit. Abstraction is a principle where you focus only on main properties of some objects and don't give any attention to its implementation. So that's it. And second one is encapsulation. Is a property of language to which helps us to bundle together methods and data that works with this data in side of a class, and it helps us to hide some implementation details via access modifiers. Inheritance is a third one. It allows us to create new classes based on base classes. So we can create derived classes which inherit the properties, methods of base class. And polymorphism is a feature of language which allows us to manipulate with the derived object class as with the parent object. So that's it.
Okay, that's great. Pretty decent description. Okay, so let's go to the next one. In Java, we have 2 major methods. Hashcode and equals. I would like you to mention what is the contract between those 2 methods and how hashcode is related to equals.
Okay, so of course, I'd like to mention that equals and hashcode should be override for objects that we use in collections, which are hash maps, hash sets, and hash-based collections. And that's mostly some model classes, entity classes. And the contract is for the same objects which are equal to each other. hashcode should be equal, but for the same hashcode, objects can be different. So that's it.
Okay. And you mentioned about some collections that, in case when we use, for example, a hash map, we should implement hash code. But does it pertain only to the situation when we create some collections, or we should create rather hash code and equals for every class that we write by our own?
If this is not like a service class, but it's a model, that's required to override these methods, because it can be used not only in our code, but for example in frameworks. Some frameworks can use hash codes in serialization process or something like that, and it's required.
Okay, I see. Great. So let's proceed to the next question. I would like to ask you about garbage collector. Do you know what is that, and what is the purpose of it in Java?
Yeah, so basically in Java, we don't manage our memory as in C++, for example. We create objects and it's automatically manage space in the heap. So, and when the object is not used, we shouldn't clear the space that we used for this object, because this is job of a garbage collector. If no one refers the object anymore, garbage collector will understand that this object can be cleaned up from the heap space. And that's how it works. There are different algorithms how it works in Java. That's
Okay.
it.
How about triggering garbage collector? Is it something that we have to take care of, or somehow it happens automatically?
In most cases, as I saw in some graphics, garbage collector occurs. Garbage collection process occurs when some threshold of a heap memory is achieved. For example, 70% of memory is loaded. So then garbage collection occurs, but that depends on algorithm. Some algorithms can do it like from time to time. Others are based on the threshold. That's it.
Okay, but is there any method to manually trigger garbage collector if we would like to do so?
Maybe I think that there is one, but as I didn't work with the memory stuff, so I don't know it. But I'm pretty sure that we can do it.
Okay, thank you. So we touched already collections a little bit. I would like to ask you about the difference between Treeset and HashSet. So we already spoke about hash functions, but what is the difference between those two, Treeset and
Okay,
hash?
so set, first of all, set is a collection that contains only unique values, and we cannot add two same values in the collection. It will be just override. In a hash set is based on a hash code. So objects that we add. So basically, inside of the hash set is a hash map, as far as I remember. But for now, never mind. Hash set uses hash code and equals for the objects that we are adding, and the order is kind of random, because it's not like a random, but it's based on hash code, and the hash code of an object is not quite an ordered stuff. But Treeset is based on a red-black tree and binary tree, and it keeps order for the values that we add. And if the object that we add implements comparator, it will use the order of this compare method, or we can use the it implements comparable. Sorry, but if we would like to add some specific order mechanism for that, we can send the we can send the implementation of comparator for this class in the constructor of Treeset. Yeah,
Okay.
but main difference is that we can order in a specific way these objects in Treeset.
Okay. So just to double check, so what is the reason of using HashSet? Because it seems that HashSet has some random order. Treeset is ordered, so it seems that it would be maybe more reasonable to use Treeset for all of the use cases.
Of course, as we have the hashcode based algorithm in the HashSet, that's quite efficient. And for example, insertion of the object to HashSet is O from 1, big O notation from 1, constant value. While for the Treeset, it will be some other one, but not constant, because it depends on order, and its HashSet is quite faster.
Okay, yeah, completely makes sense. Okay, so let's go a little bit higher in terms of abstraction. I would like to ask you about design patterns. Why design patterns are important when we code, and maybe you remember examples of design patterns that you use in your everyday work.
Okay, so design patterns. Everyday programmers face problems, and a lot of problems are pretty same to each other, but in some different ways they are. Only algorithms that and business logic differs, but the problem keeps the same. And for such problems, design patterns were created. That's a common solution for such problems. For example, strategy. Strategy pattern is a pattern that we can use really on daily basis. But before frameworks were created, for example, we had comparator. It implements strategy pattern, and when we want to just switch the order of the elements that we are using in sort, we just change the implementation of this comparator, but the algorithm for a quick sort or some other sorts that are used in the frameworks, this keeps the same. But we send our piece of business logic to inside of this algorithm, and it helps us to reduce the amount of code, because we don't need to implement all the sorting algorithm again, as it was done before this pattern was invented. So that's pretty simple. We use factories, we use builders on a daily basis, we use proxies, etc., etc.
Yes, exactly. And even it's worth to mention that even the naming itself is easier to read when we use some other libraries, right? And we see that there is some sort of factory or something. Then
we understand what should happen. It simplifies. Because we write code not only for us and for machines, because mostly we read code, and it helps a lot.
Usually maintaining is even more expensive than writing it for the first time. Okay, that's cool. So let's proceed to Spring. So I think for Java developers it's one of the most important frameworks. And let's start from Spring Boot. Do you have any experience working with Spring Boot?
Yeah, I worked with Spring Boot for a few years. On my first project, I didn't have it, but on my last ones, I had it. Spring
Okay.
Boot is a great tool which helps us to boot our application with Spring framework and different modules of that. For example, if we need to add some, for example, Azure integration with Spring, we just add one of the Azure starters, and we remove the big amount of boilerplate code via that. Before Spring Boot was invented, we should add the libraries one by one that are needed to our project, and configure a lot of beans, a lot of configurations, properties to make these modules work together. But Spring Boot starters helps us a lot because we don't need to configure them. They provide some basic configuration for these modules, and if you want, you can override them or via beans or via some YAML files configurations. That's it.
Okay. Yes, makes sense. So there's plenty of advantages basically. Okay. So as for the dependency injection, I would like to ask you, as this is basically one of the most important mechanisms in Spring, right? And I would like to ask you first, what is dependency injection and how can we implement dependency injection? Because there's plenty of ways to do so if we use Spring.
So in terms of Spring or dependency injection, like outside of a Spring framework?
Let's start from definition and then let's go deeper into Spring itself.
Okay, so dependency injection is a mechanism where where our object is not. So basically, there is dependency inversion and inversion of control. Inversion of control is where our object is not responsible for creating its dependencies. Someone else is creating its dependencies. For example, we can implement it via factory method pattern, where our derived class will provide us dependency. That's like a quite kind of simple example of inversion of control. Dependency injection is a one of the implementations where we inject our dependencies via some third element dependency. So some kind of injector that injects our dependencies. And in Spring Framework, we have the dependency injector container, inversion of control container, which injects all the dependencies between the beans and helps us to decouple decouple the dependencies of our project and decouple the classes, because our classes don't know about implementations. One of the solid principles is a dependency inversion, where we rely not on implementations, we rely on abstractions, and via inversion of control and container and dependency injection, we can achieve it.
Okay. Makes sense. And we have two places where we can inject our dependencies. There is a constructor and there is setter method, basically, right?
That's about Spring.
Yes. So we can talk about Spring now, and I would like to you to ask. I would like to ask you about the difference between these two methods, right? Because we can either use that via constructor and via setter. And what is the difference, basically? And maybe some use cases where we should use one way and when we should use the another one.
In Spring we can inject our dependencies or via constructor or via setter. Via constructor, it's like the best variant because our bin wouldn't be created without dependencies that are needed for that. Because if we don't inject one of the dependencies on a runtime, for example, null pointer can occur, and it's better to inject all the dependencies on a initialization phase when the bins are created. But also we can inject the bin via setter, and it will be set at once the bin is created, as I believe. So we can set it a little bit later. I think it could be done maybe to when this bin is quite hard, is kind of loaded one for the memory, and it's not needed on initialization phase, but it's needed a little bit later. We can init it a little bit later, to reduce the startup time for the project, as an example, where we can use it.
Yes, and sometimes we even cannot have the dependency in container yet, right? Hence,
Yeah.
we are not able to inject that during startup. Okay, that's pretty cool. So let me ask you one more question from Spring. There is a concept of Spring profiles. Do you have experience with that? Do you recall what is that?
Yeah, I had experience with Spring profiles. We can we can define Spring profiles and active profiles for the application, and based on the active profiles, we can active some beans or deactivate some beans. It helps us to, for example, for testing or for development phase, or even at production phase, we can swap some storage sources, or we can change some implementations. For example, on local environment, we use, I don't know, a local DB, which is in memory, but for the production environment, we use some remote URL for the DB and some other connections. Just an example. We can use Spring profiles. We can set Spring profiles via our VM options. That's, as far as I remember, Spring profiles active VM option. But basically, I use Ultimate IDEA, so I can. It's simpler a little bit to set them. And we can also set the profiles in our YAML or property file. It defines also YAML is some kind of a profile. We can create separate YAML for separate profiles. For example, application minus test YAML will be for test profile configuration. So I wouldn't recommend to use the profile specification in the YAML file, because YAML itself is about profiling.
Okay, I see your point. Great. Okay, so let's switch topic a little bit, and let's go to the part that all developers love the most, so testing. I would like to ask you what kind of tests you write in your everyday work.
On my daily basis, I work with unit tests. That's kind of important, and I think that it's not an important, it's vital, because if we write tests for our code, not just to cover the a percent of coverage that we have on our projects, we need to write it to cover all the edge cases of our business logic, or all the cases for our utility methods and such stuff. It's very important to keep tests actual and code covered. So I write unit tests, and I write some Spring Boot tests which cover controller or web layer. But in my experience, I didn't write any automation tests which are which interact between different microservices. So I wrote only tests which can be run on local machine. inside one application.
Okay, makes sense. And now, super open question. So it's completely up to you how you see that. There is no one correct answer, basically. So I'd like to ask you, in your opinion, how good tests should look like? I mean, what are the properties of good tests?
Okay, so the way I see it is given when the structure, or there are some different namings for that, but the sense is the same. It helps us to read the test. Also, the naming is quite important. There are different methodologies for naming of tests, but usually I use such one: testing method underscore state under test underscore and expected result. So, for example, let's test method, I don't know, uppercase, uh, uppercase underscore, all letters are lowercase, that's the state, and underscore the result, all letters are uppercase. We can see the result, and we can see the state of the what this method test, and we cannot even read the test. We understand it, but even if you need the details, you can read the test. That's it. Some other guys say that it's not quite good to have multiple asserts. For example, multiple assert equals. But I think that it's totally fine because our tests, even if we test only one module, which is for unit test, we test only one module, we can check some properties. We can, so that's it. Or we can, if a result of a test is a list, we can check the amount of objects in this list and some properties in this object as well. So I think it is not a big problem.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, that's cool. Okay, so let's leave tests for now, and let's go to cloud computing slash Azure. So there will be some questions around the computing itself, and some from Azure. I would like to ask you, okay, maybe let's start from the Docker and VMs. So what is the difference between Docker and virtual machines? Because even when we use Azure or AWS or any other cloud provider, we see the difference. There are some services for virtual machines, right? And there are some services where we can use Docker. So basically, what is the major difference between those two?
Okay, so Docker is about orchestration, first of all. There are two different approaches for like isolation of the our software. We can use virtual machine is there is a like host machine. It runs some different virtual machines which has its own operation system which we should configure, and then we run our software over this operation system. But in orchestration, which is Docker, which is Docker approach as well, we don't have we have the same host machine, but we don't need to configure operation system. In orchestration, we have containers, which run our applications independently, and they use the operation system of a host machine. So in the container or Docker approach, we don't need to configure our operation systems, and you can run applications easily because that's you write the code how our infrastructure should look like, and all you just need is to run this container. While in the VM, you have to you have to configure the operation system, and it's quite hard to transfer the solution that we configure to the new machine, because all you need to install these drivers. Maybe some operation system can be different, and all this stuff. But containers is not like a silver bullet and Docker, because as they use the same operation system of a host machine, is in case of interfering, VMs are a little bit safe compared to Docker. But Docker as well is fully isolated from each other.
Okay, makes sense. And do you recall the name of the service in Azure that we can use in order to deploy some Docker containers?
I know that there is. Let me think a little bit. I won't remember it. So I think I had a Kubernetes on my project, and we used Lens for that. So, but while I was learning the Azure, I uploaded some image.
Yeah.
So I don't remember.
Okay, that's completely fine. When we have some application, there is a way where we can handle some higher traffic, and this is called scaling. And basically, I would like to ask you, what is the difference between vertical and horizontal scaling? Do you recall that term from cloud computing?
Yeah. So when we need some performance in our machines, for example, our databases or our pods of our applications, we need to scale them. There are two types of scaling, vertical and horizontal. Vertical is when you increase the hardware power of your machine that runs your application. For example, you increase the RAM, you increase some CPU, such stuff. Or you can use vertical scaling, which is like increases the amount of the machines that run your application. There are benefits and drawbacks for each approach. For the vertical scaling, it's easy. You just need to increase the power, pay some money, but as soon as your application gets some popularity, it gets much. You pay more and more and more for each scaling. So, and it will be very expensive. As for the horizontal scaling, you cannot just add the new machine and everything works fine. You have to implement such mechanism like load balancing between them, or if it's a database, you will need some replicas. You will need some mechanism for the switching of the main databases, synchronizations between them. So you cannot just like add a new machine, and that's fine. But as soon as you configure all this stuff, you can even add or decrease the amount of machines on demand. For example, if your application is very popular at 5 p.m., you can add some machines by schedule, and it will decrease the loading of your whole system, and user experience will be smoother.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and usually once we have that infrastructure and once we use like Kubernetes service or something, then scaling shouldn't be a problem, like horizontal one.
Kubernetes takes a lot and simplifies us a lot all these configurations, because we don't connect and we don't call the pod right by its IP. We use the group of pods, and as far as I remember, and it's load balance automatically, and we don't need to think what should we, whom should we request for now. It will be done by Kubernetes orchestration tool.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. Okay, great. So let's go now strictly to Azure. Let's imagine that we would like to write some and deploy some easy application. I mean, easy, like the short one, not much code, not a lot of code, and probably not many services. And let's assume that this is an application which purpose would be to resize images, right? So let's imagine that we have some way to upload these images, and we have some way to execute some operation of the image, and then as an output we have image of different size. If you think about Microsoft Azure, what would be the services that you could use in such situation? Can you recall?
Okay.
Can you propose some architecture for that?
Even for such simple applications, we can use fully serverless an infra architecture. We can use Azure Functions for this. Azure Functions are the serverless solution by Azure, which run only when the trigger is occurred. So each function has trigger, and the function you pay only for the time that code is running. So we can imagine such situation where you have a Azure function which has HTTP trigger. We upload the image via HTTP to it, and then our Azure function uploads this image to blob storage. Then we can use another Azure function which will listen to the any updates in blob storage. I think it's done by this trigger is done by message queue provider, which is data grid or something like that. So we can add this trigger to the Azure function, and once we added new blob to the to this function, we will resize it and upload a new one right there. And also we can use some filters to not trigger this function each time. Just name this image like resized or not resized to filter the events. That's it. Kind of simple. Of course, we can use some Java based application. It can be Java based application. I mean, we can use it even without Spring. We can this kind of simple application can be implemented via serverless, and it will be fine. But if we need some other, we can use other services, for example, for the Docker or other stuff.
What are the use cases basically for serverless? Because you said that we pay only for execution, right? So
Yeah.
it seems that, okay, so that would be pretty fine for most of the cases, but apparently it's not. So basically, what are the, let's say, the bottlenecks? What are the risks from servers?
Okay, so basically, Azure Function and serverless are used in the event-driven systems as some kind of middlewares, where our function processes some events and some maybe messages. That must be simple processing. But in case if we need some business logic, it will be if we write all the business logic flow on Azure Functions, and we will have like 1,000 of them, it will be quite hard to understand how system works. So we should use them only as a processing tools I think.
Okay. Yes, exactly. There's only some cases when we should use that. Um, okay, as for the technical questions, I think we are good. So let's proceed to see more soft ones as for the some work methodologies and topics like that. Okay, maybe let's start from Scrum because you mentioned that presently you work with that in your project. So I would like to ask you basically what is the difference between Scrum and Agile? Because for many people it's kind of synonym, but it's really not really a synonym. So I would like to ask you for that difference.
Okay, so basically, Scrum is a methodology, while Agile is like a philosophy. Uh, Agile defines that we should quite frequently interact with stakeholders, that some requirements might change and we should be flexible. But Scrum defines that we have sprints, we have special meetings, we have special roles for Scrums, we have like team members. Team members must be replaceable for each other. For example, in ideal Scrum, developers can test in case of some stuff. That's the main difference. So, for example, Kanban is also agile methodology, but Scrum is about sprints, releases, grooming sessions, etc.
hmm Okay, so you started talking about Scrum ceremonies. So what Scrum ceremonies, what Scrum meetings we have in sprint?
Okay, so in our sprints, we have, of course, daily meetings. Each part of a team says what he did yesterday, what he's going to do today, and maybe some uh, problems that he faced, just to know the state of team, how the tasks are completing. Maybe they need some help. Maybe there are any blockers. That's kind of important and should be verified each day. So that's why daily exists. Also, we have grooming sessions. Grooming sessions helps us to understand stories, to get some clarifications for stories, to estimate them. In some teams, estimations are separate meetings. In some teams, estimations are inside of grooming. So that's it. Also, we have in Scrum some sprint demos for the customer or mostly for PO. So we show what we've done in scope of the sprint, the result of the work, and we have the not the grooming. Just a moment. One session don't remember the name, where we discuss what can we do better, what we did well, and what can be improved. So just to improve the future performance of the team, retrospective session. So that's for example, people discuss that we did great communication this time, everything was fine, but we had a blocker due to other team communication, and how we can improve it. That was a problem, and team set up the goal action point for some person who will resolve this issue to not repeat it in future. That's it about Scrum. I think I mentioned everything that usually teams have.
Okay, And as for the estimations, because you said that there is a need to estimate user stories, right? Um, what's technique used to estimate? What is the process of estimation that you use?
That depends on the what we estimate and for example, if like that's a usual sprint, we have stories and we have an hour. We can estimate them in story points. We use Planet Poker, for example, to estimate the stories. Yeah. Also, for example, customer wants us to estimate some epics. Like very important to do it right now, and we can have some approximate estimations. We can use the t-shirt sizes. That's like for the sprints, like 4 sprints, 3 sprints, estimate them in sprints. Or we can use some other techniques, but I didn't have an experience with them.
Okay. Yes, apparently that's pretty common situation that we have some requests either from stakeholders, from the client or from the product owner to
Yeah.
basically to grab something more to the sprint, right?
Yeah, and that's
And
quite important from developers' side to refuse such uh, stories that are grabbed into the sprint, because for example, some developers say, okay, we won't write tests and we will release it. No, that's not done story if it didn't write tests. And even if customer wants to add something and the capacity is full, he should remove something from the sprint, because no magic happens. So and even if customer wants us to super eagerly estimate something without any details, please don't use story points or hours estimation. That's not the right solution.
mhm. Okay. And let's imagine that we have a situation that, okay, to make it more difficult, that you are the only person from your team in the office that day. And there is some sort of a bug on production that's super critical bug, basically major functionalities of the service don't work. And you've got, let's say, you've got a call from the customer regarding that situation. And I would like to ask you, what are the steps? Let's imagine that right now you finish the call. You get to know about that bug or the functionality that is not working properly. And I would like to ask you, what are the steps that you are going to perform now?
Okay, so even that's the production bug, and it's critical, right? So first of all, I'm going to let my team know. Even if I'm a single developer, I have a team. So I'll let the team know that I oppose my current task that I'm working, and I work on the super critical bug. If that's some kind of a stuff that and this bug is like 5 story points or something like that, and this doesn't fit our sprint, we should remove something. I understand that according to Scrum, we cannot change the sprint tasks during the sprint, but some major things can happen, and I think it's okay if you communicate with PO to remove some tasks, and they are totally fine with that. I think we can remove it. So yeah, we take this task to the sprint, and as it's a production bug, I think you will need some help, maybe from DevOps side, for communication, for connection to some logs to the production environment, because developers not quite often have such rights. And you start fixing it. I don't know what to add. I think that's the process.
Okay. Yes, apparently that would be good to communicate with the person who signalized that problem, right? So get to know about the progress, let's say.
Yeah, of course. Of course, each day you will have to, or even that depends on the size of the task or bug. And what I'd like to add. Okay, let's skip maybe.
Okay, that's great. Cool. Okay, let me take a look on the list if I would like to ask you something more. Yes, maybe last question, and then we will proceed to coding task. As for the Scrum, because we mentioned something about the Scrum Master, we mentioned something about the product owner, but basically, what is the team composition, and what are the Scrum roles? From the purely from the Scrum perspective, not from the our experience, which is not really according to the book, let's say, but from the theory, what kind of roles should we have in Scrum?
Okay, so in Scrum there are 3 roles. That's Scrum Master, PO, and team members. PO is a guy who quite frequently communicate with stakeholders or even sometimes a part of them. So he knows what should be done in scope of the sprint and in scope of the release to achieve the project goals and project views on the future. Scrum Master is like the guy who helps to team to follow the Scrum process. He leads all the meetings, ceremonies, and communicate with his managers, like POs and stakeholders as well, to not disturb team with these communications, because it takes time and reduces velocity. And team members include developers, testers, some maybe UI specialists, automation, DevOps guys.
Hmm.
Depends on the
Okay.
team and the projects.
Okay. And as for the Scrum Master, you said that it would be good to have that person during all meetings, but is it really necessary to have Scrum Master during all Scrum ceremonies?
I think that Scrum Master are not required, for example, for grooming sometimes, because sometimes business analysts are in the teams and they communicate regarding the requirements for the stories. And developers quite frequently communicate with BAs about such stuff. So I think that depends on the team composition.
Great. Okay. I think we are good with questions, but thank you for that. As I promised, now we'll go to coding task and let's try to code something. In our interview too, in the chat, I'm pasting for you the task. So you can open your any tool you want. Any coding tool can be so easy, some easy text editor as well. It is up to you. And as for the task, let me quickly introduce that. Let me quickly say what I would like you to do. So basically, we have a string, right? And we have to determine if that string is palindrome. So basically, palindrome, this is a string. It can be word or the whole sentence, whatever. That reading left to right and right to left is the same, right? Please consider all the alphanumeric characters. So you can, for example, remove spaces, commas, and dots. if you cover that tree, and that would be great. And please ignore cases. So no matter if that's the sentence that starts from the capital letter, we don't care about that. And we have an example. So basically we have red room, sir, is murder. As you can see, if you remove all of the spaces and the commas, we don't have dots here, but if you remove spaces and commas, reading right to left and left to right is the same, and that it means that this is a palindrome, right? So basically our method should, or even the whole application should return the information that this is a palindrome. It can be even the Boolean value. That would be great. It doesn't have to be any sophisticated text or dialog window or whatever. Boolean value is completely fine. Please don't care about the whole class, about the imports, etc. If you write only the method itself, that would be great.
Okay.
Feel free to ask questions if you have any.
Alphanumeric means that we should have the numbers and characters as well, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So first of all, I'll add new class, which is let it be palindrome. I believe it's something like that. Verifier. Yep. Let's add the method, which will be, I think it can be static for such algorithmic stuff. It will be Boolean, it will return Boolean. And let's check if palindrome, it will consume string. And for now, that's it. Let's create a test for that, just to follow the test-driven development structure. So let's create two tests. Palindrome string provided, answer is true, and not palindrome, answer is false. So I can copy your string if you don't mind that you provided in task.
Yep, but please remember that this is only exception. So sorry, not exception. Example. So yeah,
I think I can add once just to cover the numbers.
But it should cover all of the cases, right?
Yeah, right. So we will have the this, that's a result, and let's add the assertion. Assert true, I believe. Yeah, that's the result. So for that, I'll copy. Not palindrome, it will be false. Let's be careful. Okay. Assert false, we should use. Let's add static imports here. Okay. I think these tests are fine. We will have one. Quite long.
Oh, that's okay. No need to execute it now.
Okay, I just wanted to build it. Okay, let's write some code here. First of all, I think we should simplify our string, because we should remove all these spaces, unnecessary characters here, and then we can lowercase all the string, and then reverse it and see what is other equal or not. So let's add the new method as well, which will simplify the string. I'll add the test for that. generate these test methods. It should remove all the symbols that are not in alphanumeric. That's a string result. And there we should see some kind of red room. There is murder and one in, I think that's right. Red room, sir, is murder. Okay. And the result must be it. Okay, now we can implement this string or this method. I think we can use replace all. We can replace all these unnecessary symbols with empty string, and we will get this string. So it must be not, first of all, we should lowercase it to lowercase, and then replace everything which is not from A to Z and from 0 to 9. I believe it must work. Yeah, that works. And now we should implement our isPalindrome method. Let's simplify the string. First of all, that we have, it will be simplified, and it must be the same as reverse string. So let's create new string buffer, string builder, sorry. Simplified and reverse it to string, and call it reversed. And reversed must be equal to simplified string. Let's see what we have. Yeah, that's it. I think we can add something more, like zeros, for example. Yeah, that works. I think that's the solution for this task.
Okay, so let's go back to the class where we have implementation, please.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So yes, exactly. Yes, we could add something like secure situation when, for example, string is empty or null, right? To throw somebody. You don't have to write now, but just for the idea to improve that, maybe that would be something that we could implement. Yes, but overall it looks really good. I'm even a bit surprised that you went with TDD. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I think we are good then. Let me take and let's go back to tests for a while. Okay.
I think we, as there is only one test for that, I didn't rename it according to this convention, but
That's okay. That's fine. That's fine. Okay, that's cool. Thank you for that. I think we are good. As promised, that was rather a short one, so that's okay. So you can stop sharing the screen. Okay, that's fantastic. Okay, so we are done with the coding part as well. Thank you for that. And now there is a time for your questions if you have any. Obviously, it's only technical round, but maybe you have questions to some topics that we mentioned or whatever you want to ask.
Oh, I think I should record or write the questions that I had, but maybe I'll remember it. Can't ask for now.
Okay, that was that's it. It looks like that was a pleasure to talk to you. I really like the fact that during the coding task you are constantly speaking. That's really cool because one of the most important aspects of the coding task is to kind of to verify your way of thinking, right? And thanks to
I
that,
understand. We on our project, I conducted a lot of interviews with technical part. We had like mostly of technical part. We asked our interviewees to implement some endpoints according to business logic, and we asked to comment his actions. That's kind of important because on daily basis we worked in pairs, so we practice pair programming, and also that's very important to speak to explain your thoughts. That's why. And that's kind of important to use TDD, and especially in such algorithmic tasks. Often I solve such of them on some resources, but write tests for your fragments of the algorithms. It helps a lot too, because if the task is complex, you will have like a lot of failing tests, and you won't know which part of your application fails.
Definitely good behavior, and it's better to go in this way than other ones. So yeah, that's true. Okay, so thank you very much. As I said, that was a pleasure.
Me too. Thank you.
Yeah,
For me too.
So that was a great one. So thank you and goodbye.
Goodbye.
Wow, what an incredible interview there. And I hope you really enjoyed listening to our individuals and the questions, and certainly seeing the live coding as well as we talked through that. Now we move on to a really exciting part of the interview where we speak to the individuals separately to get some feedback on how that process went. So first, we're going to go to our candidate, Rodion, and we're going to find out his impression of the interview and some feedback. So Rodion, tell us, what was your impression of that whole interview session? And how did you generally feel that the whole situation progressed?
Thanks, Chris. That was a great interview. Thanks, Bartosz. In my opinion, I totally showed the skills that I have, that questions were valid, and they were quite great in my opinion. And I like the technical part where we had the coding task. I really enjoyed it. That's it.
Excellent. And I think the big question, so do you think you get the role? How do you think you performed if you look on yourself, reflect on yourself?
I think that interview was kind of smooth, and I answered fine. So I think that I'll get it.
Well, thanks so much for being involved, and thanks for that honest feedback. I think that's really important, particularly for those of you listening to hear the kind of feedback from our candidate. So thank you. And now we go to our interviewer, Bartosz. We're going to ask some feedback here. So Bartosz, over to you. Tell us, firstly, how did you think the interview flowed?
I think that was super smooth interview. That was a very pleasant one for me as an interviewer, and I hope for the candidate as well. Basically, I think like from the very beginning when I looked at the CV, I thought that it's a good match. Looking at the job description and the CV, it really matches. Basically, we touched many topics: Java, Spring, Azure. So we covered lots of ground. From Java, I would say there is some space to improve. Like for example, some minor detailed concepts around the garbage collector. Maybe something about the collections. Same for Spring. I think that the candidate could speak something more about the advantages of Spring Boot. As for the soft skills, I think that was a good one. That was a good exchange of experiences, good exchange of ideas, how we could tackle problems and challenges that we have. As for the coding task, that's the part that I think I like the most. Even in the previous section, even in the previous segment of the interview, during the questions, I could feel that candidate is well prepared for the role and for the interview itself. Back to coding task, I really like the fact that candidate spoke about what he's coding now and what he's doing right now. That's really great, because for me that's the clear indicator what is the thinking process of that person. I like the fact that tests were implemented. He was asked only to implement the code itself, the algorithm itself, but using TDD, I can see that that person remembers about tests and use that every day. That's super important. Obviously, there could be some small improvements, like covering some corner cases, as for example empty string, etc. But this is something that is rather minor one. So I think that's a good fit, and as for the feedback, it's clearly positive, with some minor aspects that could be improved, but these are super minor ones.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being our interviewer today. And I'm sure those of you watching found the coding exercise as interesting as I did. Having that voiceover was something really, really useful. So it's great to hear from your experience that was something you enjoyed as well. So thanks, Bartosz, for being our interviewer today. So that brings us to the end of this interview session. I hope that those of you watching have enjoyed it. And thank you for tuning in to this interview today. Please do engage with us on our social channels, and they're all down there in the description. So check those out. As well, make sure to get involved in the Anywhere community, and do keep an eye on this channel for further updates and videos to come in the future. So make sure to like, share and comment, and thank you for watching the Anywhere Club interview today.